Now this is a diagram of the shock cam. The shock cam is really a Remus. It's a Remus that was developed as a result of funding from the Discovery Channel. Now, those of you that ever watched the Discovery Channel, they have a program called Shock Week. And Shock Week asked us to develop a Remus, like this one, that could follow a shock through the ocean. And by following the shock through the ocean, they could tell its habitat, how deep it went, what it was feeding on. And it was pretty fascinating. If you look at this particular diagram, you can see that it has a front pivot camera in the front. In the middle of the Remus is a GoPro camera. You see fins on the back. It has an antenna. And they're pretty fascinating. Let's see what this Remus can do. The video that you just watched can best be described as when the hunter became the hunted. On display in our Ocean Science Discovery Center is the actual Remus that was in that video. If you look at this particular photograph, towards the right-hand side of the Remus, you can see the gouge marks put in place by the shark teeth. Also, in the middle of the photo, in the square, is the GoPro camera that filmed all of the events for the Discovery Channel. Now, other things that are not, I guess, entertaining, they also have a very serious use with Remus technology. Here we have locating Air France 447. Here we have a map of locating Air France 447. Air France 447 was flying from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, France, when it crashed in 2009. It was finally located in 2011. We determined that the flight stalled, its pilot tubes were obstructed by ice crystals. It caused the autopilot to disconnect. Therefore, it crashed in the South Atlantic. At 15,000 feet of depth, with 228 deaths lost. We located it with a Remus 6000. Watch the next video.
French investigators invested 2 years and about $50 million trying to find that airplane, all without luck. So finally, they called in Mike Purcell and his team, the same organization that famously found the Titanic. With this underground robot, Purcell coaxed the Atlantic to finally give up its secrets.
And we knew immediately that we had found the airplane.
The robot returned with these photos, parts of the plane fuselage, other small aircraft parts, the galley. They also came back with something else.
Some human remains definitely put the focus on that this was a real tragedy and that a lot of people had lost their lives.
Not only did Purcell's team find the black boxes in the wreckage, after 2 years in the water, they still worked.
Now, sort of a more fun thing with Remus technology. Let's take a look at this video.
We have new information about the discovery of a 310-year-old Spanish shipwreck carrying treasure that might be worth up to $17 billion. The ship was found with the help of an underwater robot, an unmanned submarine similar to this one. Don Daler is at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where researchers disclosed the robot's role this week. Don, good morning.
Hey, good morning. This is the unmanned submersible vehicle, the Remus 6000. It can dive up to depths of 4 miles. It's loaded with sensors and cameras. And this is part of the team of researchers who found what may end up being one of the most valuable shipwrecks in history.
These bronze cannons confirmed the holy grail of shipwrecks had been found at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea. They're engraved with dolphins, a telltale sign they belong to the Spanish galleon San Jose, lost more than 300 years ago.
I just sat there for about 10 minutes and smiled.
Jeff Cayley was alone on his bunk in the search vessel when he spotted the cannons.
I'm not a marine archaeologist, but
You know what a cannon looks like.
I know what a cannon looks like. So in that moment, I was the only person in the world who knew we'd found the shipwreck.
The exact location of the wreckage is still a secret, but it was discovered in November 2015 off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia. Its cargo of gold, silver, and emeralds could be worth as much as $17 billion today. The Remus 6000, operated by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Massachusetts, found the ship almost 2,000 feet below the surface. The underwater robot scanned the seafloor using long-range sonar, then went back and took pictures of any objects that seemed out of the ordinary.
You can take bigger risks with your technology and go to places where it wouldn't be safe or feasible to put a human being.
The Remus used the same methods to find Air France Flight 447, which crashed off the coast of Brazil in 2009. British warships sunk the San Jose and its crew of 600 in 1701, its final moments immortalized by the painter Samuel Scott. For now, all of its treasure remains underwater. Working with the Colombian government, the Woods Hole team also found artifacts like teacups and ceramic jugs.
Everyone's focused on the treasure aspect. The whole thing is a cultural treasure. It's a piece of history that's sitting on the seafloor that tells a story.
The actual location of the shipwreck is still a secret because there's a legal battle going on between Spain and Colombia as to who actually owns the treasure. But as for the folks who found it, they say they don't have a dog in that fight. They are explorers, not treasure hunters.
Another great event from the annals of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is finding the Titanic. As most of you know, the Titanic was a British luxury liner that sank on April 14th to the 15th in 1912 during a maiden voyage from Southampton, England to New York City, with a loss of almost 1,500 passengers and crew. Now, interestingly enough, one of our scientists from Woods Hole, by the name of Robert Ballard, discovered the Titanic along with the French in 1985, 2 miles below the surface. It had national headlines, international headlines about finding the Titanic. Here you see a picture of Bob Ballard with one of our research vessels in the background. So that was original footage of the original Titanic video footage filmed by Bob Ballard. This, however, is the interesting part about discovering the Titanic. If you read the headline, the discovery of the Titanic wreck was a front for a secret U.S. military mission. Let's discuss that for a moment. Bob Ballard, as I mentioned, was a scientist at WHOI. He also was a naval officer. He had a top secret mission in 1985 to find 2 submarines, the Thresher and the Scorpion, 2 U.S. submarines, which sank in 1963 and 1968, respectively. The Navy wanted to determine the condition of the nuclear reactors. So the mission to the public was that Bob Ballard was going out to find the Titanic wreck. Indeed, that's what he set out to do, and that's how the newspapers reported it. But the reality was he was looking for the Scorpion and the Thresher. He did find the Scorpion, and he did find the Thresher. He also determined that the nuclear reactors were not leaking fuel. That's what the Navy wanted. And then after he found the 2 submarines, they took the photographs, did the research. He then could go look for the Titanic, which he did do. So that's sort of the secret story of finding the Titanic. Alvin is our only manned underwater vehicle. It has made over 5,000 dives in its over 60-year history. It's the country's only deep-diving research submarine. It is owned by the U.S. Navy and operated by WHOI. The Alvin was first launched in 1964. Its original cost was $498,000. It carries 2 scientists and 1 pilot. It weighs approximately 45,000 pounds. The original Alvin, seen in this photo, could dive to 15,000 feet. And here you have, by the way, a photo of the Alvin being unloaded from the mothership, the Atlantis. Here's a cutaway view of the Alvin capsule. The large block is in the white area. It's a cutaway of the Alvin. And in that round sphere is really where the occupants are. The white part is made of synthetic foam, or it's buoyancy foam. You see the red tower on the top of the vehicle. That's how the passengers will get in. You can see in the front of it, manipulator arms, lithium-ion batteries powering the unit. Now, you may recall that I mentioned in one of the slides, 2 slides ago, that the original cost was $498,000. The current upgrades, and is upgraded frequently, is around $40 million. The outside of the capsule is made of titanium. It's 3 inches thick, has 5 viewports made of plexiglass, and it can explore almost 99% of the ocean floor, traveling up to 4 miles down. About 12,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. Thus, the shell itself is round. Inside the Alvin capsule, and this is a really old photo. It really doesn't look like this anymore, but I put it into the slideshow to show you that when you're down there, it's darn cold. And you got to dress fairly warm. There's no heat inside this particular capsule. And as you may have anticipated, there are no bathrooms, so you better bring bottles with you because that's what you're going to use. You're down there for a fair amount of time. Here you have a photo of the Alvin in the high bay being disassembled for repairs. Every 5 years, the U.S. government requires us to take apart the Alvin and put it together again to make sure that it is safe. Most recent upgrades were completed in September 2022, but those upgrades have been completed. It has a new titanium ballast, higher horsepower thrusters, additional manipulator arm, improved high quality and still and video systems, and is capable now of reaching 21,000 feet or 6,500 meters, which equals about 98% of the ocean floor. One of the other fascinating events that is associated with Woods Hole Oceanographic, or WHOI, is the discovery of hydrothermal vents. Let's discover what hydrothermal vents really are. Another type of hydrothermal vents are black smokers, discovered in 1977 by Robert Ballard aboard the WHOI vessel Noor, 400 miles off the coast of South America. Water is heated by hot magma in excess of 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember now, prior to his discovery, it was assumed that no life could exist out of the reach of sunlight. Another one of our vehicles is involved in the search for the Faro. This is the AV Sentry, autonomous vehicle, underwater vehicle. AUV stands for autonomous underwater vehicle. It's sort of like the Remus. It can explore 6,000 meters or 19,865 feet in depth. Its shape allows for fast ascent and descent. It can take pictures of the seafloor, sea vents, ocean ridges, and be used in conjunction with the Alvin. This is a photo of the Faro cargo ship. The Faro was sailing from Jacksonville, Florida to Puerto Rico in 2015. It sailed, unfortunately, into Category 3 hurricane, with 33 deaths. Several graduates of Mass Maritime Academy were on board.
26 hours of everything set on the bridge of that ship until its devastating end would be recovered, preserved on a credit card-sized chip inside this voyage data recorder, or VDR, about the size of a basketball.
We actually came up with the needle in a haystack analogy. The size of a needle in the average haystack kind of matched up with the size of the Faro debris field and wreckage, and the voyage data recorder is your needle.
Andy Bowen is a principal engineer at WHOI, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. It was technology from WHOI's deep submergence lab that would make all the difference.
In 1985, the discovery of the Titanic was a big part of what was done here in this lab. We've gone on from that point to do many different things, exploring the ocean.
The National Transportation Safety Board would require that expertise. It took them more than a month to find Faro. The ship's emergency beacon had failed. Another major setback was during the sinking, the bridge of the ship split from the main body of the vessel. That wheelhouse was found, but a mast the VDR was attached to had broken off and was missing.
We were contacted with the idea that maybe we would be able to help them with what ultimately would be a much more extensive and detailed search.
A main tool for that search was the Sentry.
Sort of the equivalent of an underwater drone. It has onboard batteries, it has computers, and it has sensors, and we program it with a mission.
Bowen and Sentry arrived at the El Faro site nearly 7 months after the disaster, tasked with finding that needle in the haystack 3 miles down.
The seafloor is quite peaceful. On the other hand, a lot of the evidence that you're looking at speaks to the rather violent end of the ship. The ship, once it had flooded and left the surface, fell at a fairly high rate of speed. In particular, you could see the sort of impact craters, this sort of wash of sediment that has gone out many hundreds of feet. The impact actually broke the ship in half. You know, people perished within this debris, and you know, that's something that never leaves you.
Bowen says the importance of finding answers was felt by all, and those answers came when the mast they were searching for was spotted.
Within minutes of identifying the mast, it was possible to discern a very small little object hanging by a thread, and lo and behold, that turned out to be the VDR.
A mission the summer of 2016 to recover the VDR was also a success.
The retrieval of the voyage data recorder was so important, not only for those who lost loved ones, but also for the investigators to be able to draw the maximum amount of information. I have no doubt that that's going to play an important role in how future mariners go about their business.
In addition to all the other equipment that you've seen at WHOI, we also do a lot of work with buoys. Buoys, again, are located in the ocean areas and are utilized by numerous countries around the world. Now, many years ago, instead of buoys, we used lightships. They served as lighthouses in the open ocean, located near shoals, sandbars, and other nautical hazards. They served as weather stations, guided ships and aircraft, as late as the 1950s. Now, between 1820 and 1983, 179 lightships were built. You see the Nantucket in this particular photo. This was launched in 1950. There are currently only 15 lightships in existence, but none of them are in use. Some are in museums. Buoys replaced the lightships, primarily because lightships are not really cost-effective. They switched to surface and subsurface buoys, which you see in this photo. They are anchored to the ocean floor. They are powered either by wind or by solar, and all the data received from these are transmitted back to Woods Hole via satellite. They can detect wind currents, salinity of the water temperatures, barometric pressures. Here you see a photo of hard hats, or as we call them officially, bottom floats. They are air-filled glass balls shrouded in plastic. They basically keep the mooring line straight, taut, and off the sea bottom. They are attached to weights. Here you can see the weights that were mentioned in the previous slide. They weigh about a ton each. They're made of cast iron, and they are left on the ocean floor after the buoy is retrieved. On this slide, you can see the hard hats being strung out in the ocean with the big weights on the end, and then they will sink. And in the photo on the right-hand side, you can see the anchor on the bottom of the ocean. You can see the hard hats and see the buoy up on the top. And that's how we keep them in place. Periodically, however, those buoys have to be brought back in for maintenance. Here you have a lot of buoys in line in one of the warehouses at WHOI. And also inside that square, you can see, if found, please return to WHOI. I guess if you found this on the beach, I don't know how you get it back to WHOI, but that's what it says on the side of the buoy. I call your attention to the container in the back of the WHOI vessel, and I do this only as a little note here. If you were a scientist and you were going out to sea, and remember now, these vessels go out for an extended period of time, and they schedule your science experiments. So if you're a scientist or a couple of scientists with a particular science experiment in mind, and you sail out of Woods Hole, let's say in January 15th, and your experiment is due to be done on February 20th. Well, you can sit around the deck, I suppose. Probably not bad if you go into the Caribbean and sit in the sun, but it doesn't really work that way. Rather, what WHOI will do is take all of your science gear, put it in the back of a container, like the one you see on board this vessel, load all your gear up, send it to the nearest port of call, because periodically these ships will go in for maintenance or for food supplies. To the nearest port of call, we'll fly the container and we'll fly the scientist to the port of call. We'll load the container and you on the back of the vessel. You'll do your work. At the next port of call, we'll load the container and unload the scientist, and everyone will be returned back to Woods Hole. And that's pretty much how that works. Let's spend a few minutes on the ocean twilight zone. Now, we talked about some of the great things that WHOI has done. We had the Alvin, great piece of undersea equipment, manned equipment. We found the Titanic. We discovered hydrothermal vents. We did Remus technology and the uses of that. We recently determined an area called the ocean twilight zone. It exists 600 to 3,200 feet in depth below the ocean. We received a $32 million grant from the TED project called the Audacious Project Initiative. We discovered twilight zone animals take part in the largest migration on the planet. Animals travel to the surface to feed on plankton, then return to the deeper, darker waters during the day. And now WHOI is sailing into the future with our newest vessel, the Neil Armstrong. Thank you for joining me for this virtual dock tour of Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. To learn more about us and support WHOI's mission, including signing up for our email newsletter, please visit whoi.edu. Thank you.